Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 6 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. If you have a story you'd like to submit to the podcast, you can do so by email at karmastoriespod@gmail.com. Alright, on to today's stories, let's jump right in. This story comes to us from fake name 0064869. You sure you want your money? Fine, you're going to get every penny. This isn't my story. It was a close friend of a then close friend. I'm not sure how I never thought about sharing it, as it is one of the best malicious compliance stories I've ever heard. There's also quite a bit of background here, mostly to explain the old tech. This guy, we'll call him G, was pretty wealthy. Dude had a Nepo job where he worked in a factory fixing the machinery which literally almost never broke. Someone always had to be on duty to be ready for repairs, so he got all kinds of overtime and was being paid almost $75 an hour in the early aughts. To give you an idea of the kind of money he was making and how he didn't care, he spent most whole days sitting around watching movies on a personal laptop that he had spent over $2,000 on and just left it at his desk. If he had a call to the floor, it would take him no more than an hour, and that would happen maybe 3 times in a week. Holidays were 2.5 times pay, and he worked every one of them. This guy was a bit of a tech nerd, and he got an ISDN account as soon as it came out. For you youngins or folks who weren't savvy at the time, ISDN was basically 2 56.6 kilobyte per second modems smushed together. This was back when 56.6K was as good as it got for residential, and you could still pay for slower. So fast AF for its day. Back in the days of dial-up, the dark ages, some services would be paid by the minute of usage in addition to your monthly bill, and that's how this worked. Also, because dial-up was literal and used existing infrastructure, you could take your modem with you and use it somewhere else by logging into your account from a new location and dialing the closest number to you. This was also back in the day of long-distance charges. Now for the actual story. G just got his ISDN modem and after a day or so took it to his brother's house one town over to show him how fast it was. And after they played around on the internet for a bit, G had to go to work, and he would be doing some long shifts for the next couple of days. So his brother asked to borrow his modem, which G said was fine. I don't understand exactly how it happened, but his brother had signed into a long distance number and then forgot to shut the connection down. And then G got his first month's bill. It was over $14,000. He immediately called the service provider and explained the situation, and they basically told him, "You signed a contract, sucks to suck, we want our money." He relented and set up a payment plan. He would also be required to keep the contract going until the bill was fully paid. Now, if you've never even heard of ISDN, even if you're 30 plus years old, I don't blame you. This was a very short-lived technology and was replaced by DSL just a couple years later. But unlike ISDN, DSL required new infrastructure, and for some reason I don't fully understand, but I have guessed, is probably the way some important switch on the service provider's network was set up. The two services could not coexist in the same small region. Regions like the size of a neighborhood. And G lived in a pretty nice neighborhood. Not mansions, but upper middle class. The best neighborhood our small town had to offer, in fact, and people just wanted DSL. It was the first time the internet was getting close to recognizable as it is today, cause it was so much faster than what was previously available. The folks in this neighborhood wanted those speeds and did not like being told they couldn't have it. So, service provider calls up G and explained the situation and offered to waive the remaining amount of the bill. G told them the whole bill was BS and asked if they would refund what he had already paid, but they just told him to go F himself. Cue Malicious Compliance. G tells them he has a contract and points out that they are obligated to fulfill their end of the contract, and he will be paying his bill in full and hung up. He keeps paying. Service provider keeps getting calls from more customers wanting DSL, and folks who had previously called, calling back more and more irate. G gets another call, then another, until service provider decides to just tell people exactly who is responsible for their neighborhood's lack of DSL service. His neighbors let loose on him, but does G care? Not at all, just keeps paying his bill. This went on for more than a year. Eventually, service provider just decided to get rid of ISDN completely, as it was a legitimately outdated technology, and did forgive the remainder of G's bill since they weren't fulfilling their end of the contract. But the whole thing was just wonderful. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Mayataz. It says, "This is called cutting off your nose to spite your face. No way in heck would I keep paying on a balance that large if I didn't have to." OP responded to this one and said, he cared less about the money than the revenge. Alright, so if we ignore all of the technical issues in this story that make it fairly implausible, then it's a pretty good story, but you couldn't take an ISDN modem to another home without ISDN coming from the provider to that house. ISDN was literally physically routed to a completely different interface, so this doesn't really make sense for this story. Also, there's the fact that the company could have forgiven his debt or written off what he owed and canceled his contract at any time. Anyway, what do you all think on this one? If you're on YouTube, make sure you comment down below and let me know if there's any other inconsistencies that I missed. This story comes to us from Multilid. Want me to keep talking even if nobody's listening? Alright. This happened when I was around 14 to 15 years old. I was telling a story to my dad, and at one point he interrupted me, told me to keep talking, I'm listening very carefully, then left and closed the door. I didn't know it at the time, but he was very proud of this joke. He made it to my mom a couple of times. She never liked it. Anyway, I thought it was somewhat funny, but also pretty rude. Never mind, I knew an opportunity to teach my dad a lesson that would come sooner rather than later. So I waited, and a couple of hours later, he would come and ask me to do the dishes. You know I can't. What do you mean you can't? Why can't you do the dishes? I told you earlier. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. You know this. You told me you were listening very carefully. He realized what I was doing. Oh, right. Well, could you remind me? I forgot. No way. I'm not repeating myself. I already gave you a very simple and rational explanation. My dad was strict, but he knew when he was beaten at his own game. He did the dishes that day, and he never made that joke again. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Dragonchild. It says, "My kid once told me, 'You made me, now you have to live with the consequences.' She was right. Love her to death." Another user called Tiki Tabby said, "Parents never realize that we inherit some of the same traits from them. Then, as kids, turn those back on them. It is a part of why families love each other, seeing ourselves in each other." I was thinking about this one for a few minutes and wondering what I would do if one of my kids pulled this one on me. I would probably still do the dishes because, yeah, you got me, and that was pretty well done, but you're still gonna dry them, so step up, because you're not getting out of this. This story comes to us from Ancient Educator 76. You can't use that coupon. Hey all, it's your friendly neighborhood teacher, cashier, produce department employee here. I have parent-teacher conferences coming up, and I'm due for a haircut. I decide to go in to Super Clips using one of their coupons to do so. The coupon was for a haircut for $10.99 US that was location specific. I also had one for a free haircut through the app that I could use whenever. I decided to not show the coupon until the end. I got my haircut and was expecting some small talk or something, which I actually dread, but this guy was super focused on a conversation he was having with his neighbor. No biggie. When I presented my coupon at the end, the guy literally threw the coupon back at me saying, "Oh, we don't take those ones at this location." I started to argue that the location list specifically lists the location I was at before I was saliva-erupted as he spit back, literally, "You can't use that coupon, sweetie." Not the good sweetie. Enter Malicious Compliance. I pulled out my phone, tapped the free coupon I had, and he rolled his eyes harder than my 8th graders as he scanned it. Funny thing was that I was paying with a 20, so I was going to tip the difference, which would have been like $7 or $8. Instead, I threw him a 5 with the same energy he threw the coupon back to me. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Gogo Rolo Polo. It says, "Your tipping culture is absolutely insane if you still tip someone who was a knob to you." Okay, I'm in Canada, and I understand that in Canada and the USA we have tipping culture. It's just a thing and it happens. But in this case, if you get treated like crap by somebody, then I would just give them a token tip. So it'd be like, here's a couple of quarters. OP still tipping this person $5? The hairdresser won, dude. Your use of the coupon was only making the store miss out on money, but you gave that person a tip directly, which is money that goes into their pocket. Yeah, they definitely won. This story comes to us from Alert Librarian 6943. Wanted me to translate, so I did just that. So during this summer, I decided to put my English skills to use at my part-time job. I work at a local tiny cafe on a small city in the middle of nowhere. So I oftenly go around and just say stuff like, "Oh, hey, that shirt means this, this, and this." And people are just somewhat surprised and ask me questions about how I know English so well, and yada yada yada. The usual European elder people talk. Well, there was this cousin of mine that just used to pass by for a cup of coffee on the way to work. He was very into video games and books and social media. The usual person in the mid-20s if you ask me. So one day, he decided to ask me, "Hey, I want to learn English, so can you help?" And I was like somewhat surprised because nowadays, if you want to learn any languages, you just download an app and do daily exercises. Or just watch movies on that language. That's what I did. I told him just that, but he wasn't satisfied. He said he needs someone to be with him to check on how he evolves on the language. I know my cousin fairly well. We talk daily, so he wasn't shocked when I gave him a face and asked his real reason. He said exactly this: "There's this one English girl that is a poet. She's fine, and I want to hook up with her. I have this cool poem for them." Reddit. I stood there for 3 minutes in silence. He just wanted to learn the language for a good night? Obviously, I said that it wasn't worth all the work, and that he could just let me see the poem and let me translate it. He refused at the start, but then after some back and forth, he ended up agreeing, but he agreed in a not so thankful tone. He sounded like a darn king sparing the life of a peasant. And he said, "Don't you dare change a thing on the poem, just translate it literally and that's it." Okay, I'll translate it literally just for you, since you asked so nicely. Ahem. "Your eyes is how the sky blue. Stones brilliant on night starry. I myself ask if you can see the mines, because definitely I can see the yours the day all." Portuguese to English if you are wondering which funny language this is. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called G Greaves. It says, "We as a society have forgotten about the tales of the grand gestures that men used to do for a woman's attention." OP responded to this one and said, "I agree. I feel a bit bad for him, but the lack of please and thank you was just what led me to do this to him. But hey, maybe she'll find the broken English cute. I'd certainly find it adorable if I found a man struggling to communicate their feelings to me in my own language." Yeah, OP, even with your quite literal translation, I think it's still going to work for him. The girl's gonna see that he put in effort and actually wanted to do something to impress her. And that's more than most people can say these days that they got from the people who were interested in them. Usually these days, it's just a text message that says, "Hey, wanna smash?" This story comes to us from Repulsive Fig 2505. "You want extra butter? Coming right up." This happened many years ago when I was about 14. I am the youngest cousin of my extended family, and the youngest child in the immediate family. Family members would often ask me to do things that inconvenience themselves. Myself and 5 family members went to see a movie together. The movie theater had a popcorn station where you could add your own butter to the popcorn you ordered. Before the movie started, I had to butter the popcorn. Halfway through the previews, I had to run out and butter the popcorn again. About 15 minutes into the movie, I had to do it again. This got quite annoying as I wanted to watch this movie, obviously. About an hour into the movie, they asked me to butter the popcorn for a third time. At this point, I am getting annoyed, and I say, fine. I go to the popcorn station and put as much butter on this popcorn as humanly possible. Every kernel soaked in liquid butter. This popcorn was given to us in a flimsy bag. By the time I got back to my seat, I could feel the butter seeping out of the bag. I simply handed the popcorn over to enjoy the rest of the movie. As the movie went on, the popcorn bag was set on the ground. You could see a pool of butter form and then eventually a stream of butter. At the end of the movie, everyone had to watch their step, otherwise they would slip in said butter. A small act of malicious compliance, but my 14-year-old self got to enjoy the rest of the movie. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Godrin. It says, speaking as a former movie theater employee, that had to be a pain for some poor employee to clean up. As a younger sibling, yeah, you're not their servant. They can butter their own darn popcorn. OP responded and said, I know, we did clean up as best we could, threw away the popcorn, tried to mop up the best we could with paper-thin napkins, but no one asks me to butter popcorn anymore, so a win. OP, did they tell you that you better not do that again? I bet they were pretty salty about it. What did they expect though, asking you to pop up and go fetch it for them? I just love these stories, the ones that really do have a kernel of truth to them. This story comes to us from a deleted account. Malicious Compliances temporarily loses £65,000. I used to work at a cash center. All the security trucks would collect cash from businesses during the day. We would open the packages, credit their accounts, and the cash would be bundled and shipped back out to banks and cash machines. I worked the night shift, and it became an unwritten rule that when you finished your work, you could go. Well, one evening, we had a new manager, singled me out to stay and help the team, who loaded the money for cash machines. Now, this was a job I had never done before. I tried to ask a few questions, like how much do we put in each bundle? How much should we have in each box? Only to be met with an aggressive, just put the cash in the box, it's not rocket science. Okay, you're the boss. So I put the cash in the box, and when the box was full, I pushed the cash down and fit even more in. I kept going until physically I couldn't put another note in, and used all my weight to close the cash box. Well, it turns out they were only supposed to contain 100,000 pounds, and the crap hit the fan when they did the last checks, and they thought they were 65,000 pounds short. They ordered a full recount of all the boxes. When the one I had packed was opened, it practically exploded. There was cash everywhere. One of the girls who worked the section was stunned you could actually fit that much in one of the boxes. I would like to say I had the I told you so moment of being confronted, but the manager said nothing, and once the boxes were repacked, I went home. I never got asked to cover that section again though. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Red Kathy. It says, well, you were only following your training, which was F all, so ain't nobody gonna argue with that. Also, what is it like to have that much cash in your hand? Or is it just a tool of the job to you? OP responded to this one and said, it's just paper you can't do anything with. Although, fun fact, in the center they had a vault with cages filled with cash. One night, I counted that there was 135 million pounds in that, which didn't include any of the cash that was being processed on the cash floor. I agree with OP. I had a job previously where I managed a store that went through hundreds of thousands of dollars over a weekend. And honestly, you don't even really look at it as money anymore. I mean, you know it is, but it really is just a tool of the job, something that you're giving out to other people. And it's really not worth your job or your freedom to make any of it disappear. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to your favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day. and we'll see you tomorrow.